the toymaker's promise. He was just a wooden soldier, carved with a promise he would come to life to keep. In a city of cold gray stone and hurried, anonymous crowds, there was a small shop that was a pocket of impossible old-world warmth. The sign above the door, its letters carved in a whimsical curling script, read, Geppetto's Toys. It was not a modern toy store, filled with the loud plastic clamor of electronic gadgets. It was a hushed, magical, and fragrant sanctuary, a place that smelled of sawdust, of linseed oil, of fresh, clean pine, and of the faint, sweet scent of drying paint. The shop was a wooden wonderland, a testament to the beautiful, patient, and nearly forgotten art of the toy maker. Spinning tops, painted in brilliant, joyful colors, sat in neat, hopeful rows. Intricate, jointed puppets, their strings slack, seemed to be sleeping, dreaming of the stories they would one day tell. And on a high place of honor shelf, behind the main counter, stood a regiment of magnificent, hand-carved, and beautifully painted wooden soldiers. At the head of this silent wooden army stood one soldier who was the toy maker's masterpiece. He was tall for a toy and perfectly proportioned. His uniform was a brilliant, festive crimson, his trousers a crisp, snow white, and the tiny brass buttons on his coat were polished to a warm, golden gleam. His face, painted with a look of stoic, steadfast, and unwavering resolve, was a portrait of quiet courage. And in his small wooden and perfectly carved hand he held a tiny but exquisitely detailed wooden rose. He was not just a toy, he was a work of art, a vessel of love, a silent wooden keeper of a long-held and deeply cherished promise. Character's wish or struggle, the heart's winter. The toy maker, a gentle old man named Elias, was the heart and the hands of the small magical shop. His own heart, however, was a place of quiet, gentle, and persistent sorrow. Many years ago, his daughter, Maria, a girl with a spirit as bright and as joyful as the spinning tops he carved, had grown up and moved away across the ocean to a new and distant land. A foolish, proud, and deeply regrettable argument over her decision to leave had been the last painful conversation they had shared. A cold, heavy, and seemingly unbreakable silence had fallen between them, a silence that had stretched now for 10 long, lonely years. The wooden soldier had been the last gift he had been carving for her, a present for her 18th birthday, the year she had left. He had carved it with all the love, all the skill, all the hope he had for his beautiful, adventurous daughter. And into its small, steadfast, and unyielding wooden heart he had carved a silent promise that he would always stand guard, that he would always be there for her, that his love would be a constant, unwavering, and protective presence in her life, no matter how far she roamed. But she had left before he could give it to her. And so the soldier had stood on its high, lonely shelf, a magnificent, beautiful, and painful reminder of a broken connection, of a promise that had never been delivered. Elias's wish, a constant, quiet, and deeply held ache in his own heart, was for a second chance. He wished he could mend the beautiful, intricate, and precious mechanism of his family, a mechanism that his own foolish and stubborn pride had broken so long ago. The magical encounter, the spark of wonder, on this Christmas Eve, as a soft, gentle, and forgiving snow began to fall, blanketing the cold, gray city in a layer of pristine and hopeful white. Elias was closing his shop for the night. He was an old man now, and his movements were slow. His shoulders stooped with the weight of his years and his unspoken regrets. He turned off the main lights, leaving only a single, small, and warm lamp burning on his workbench, a lonely beacon in the fragrant, shadowy darkness. He looked up at the soldier on the shelf, his steadfast, silent, and crimson-clad confidant. "Ah, my little captain," he whispered, his voice a dry, rustling sound, like sawdust and old paper. "Another year has passed. We are good at waiting, you and I, are we not?" He was about to turn and head up to his small, lonely apartment above the shop when a strange and beautiful thing happened. The single warm light from his workbench, which had been casting its usual soft golden glow, seemed to gather itself, to concentrate, and to shine a single brilliant and purposeful beam directly onto the wooden soldier. And in that beam of magical concentrated light, the soldier began to change. The paint on his crimson coat seemed to deepen, to glow with a warm, living, and almost velvet-like richness. The tiny brass buttons on his chest seemed to shine with the brilliance of real, solid gold, and his painted, steadfast, and determined face, it seemed to soften. The painted-on resolve was still there, but it was now imbued with a new and living quality, a look of profound, gentle, and deeply loving purpose. The tiny, carved and wooden rose he held in his hand seemed to release a faint, impossible, and beautiful perfume, the scent of a real, living, and summer-warmed flower. Elias stared, his old, tired, and rational mind struggling to comprehend the quiet, beautiful, and impossible miracle that was unfolding before his very eyes. The soldier was not just a toy anymore. It was alive, and it was ready, after 10 long and patient years, to finally and magically fulfill its purpose. The transformation, the gift within, with a movement that was at once wooden and impossibly gracefully fluid, the soldier stepped down from his high, dusty shelf. He did not make a sound. He landed on the wooden counter as softly as a falling snowflake. He was no longer a small, hand-sized toy. He had grown, and he now stood a proud and perfect 3 feet tall, a magnificent, living, and breathing embodiment of a toymaker's love. He turned to the old, astonished man, and he raised his small, wooden, and non-rose-holding hand in a crisp, respectful, and deeply reassuring salute. Then he turned, and with a series of silent, purposeful, and graceful movements, he hopped from the counter to a chair, and from the chair to the floor. He marched, his painted black boots making a soft, rhythmic, and determined tapping on the old wooden floorboards, to the front door of the shop. He did not need a key. He simply raised his hand, and the heavy oaken door, with its old iron lock, swung silently and obediently open, letting in a swirl of magical, white, and silent snow. The soldier stepped out into the cold, beautiful, and transformed city, and stood at attention on the sidewalk, a magnificent, brave, and impossibly beautiful splash of crimson and gold against the pristine white snow. And he waited. A few moments later, a horse-drawn cab, its brass lanterns glowing warmly, its driver a shadowy cloaked figure, and its horses the color of midnight, emerged, as if from a dream, from the snowy, silent street. It pulled to a stop directly in front of the shop. The wooden soldier, with a courtly and impossibly graceful bow, opened the cab door, and out of the cab stepped a young woman. She had her father's kind, thoughtful eyes, and a spirit that was still as bright and as joyful as a spinning top. It was Maria. She was older now, her face holding the wisdom and the weariness of her own 10-year journey. But she was home. She had come on a sudden, powerful, and unexplainable impulse, a homesickness of the heart that had finally become too powerful to ignore. She had come to ask for forgiveness, to mend the broken, silent thing between her and her father. She had expected to find a dark, closed shop, a cold and perhaps angry reception. She did not expect to be greeted by a living, breathing, and impossibly beautiful version of a memory, of a birthday gift she had never received. The ending, the whisper of Christmas. She looked from the magnificent saluting soldier to the open door of the shop where her old, frail, and teary-eyed father was standing, his arms open, his face a beautiful, complex, and luminous map of a decade of love, of regret, of sorrow, and of a final, beautiful, and overwhelming joy. She ran to him, and in the warm, fragrant, and sawdust-scented doorway of the old, magical toy shop, the broken, silent, and beautiful mechanism of a family was finally and perfectly repaired. The wooden soldier, his promise kept, his long and patient vigil finally over, stood at his post on the snowy sidewalk, and as the father and the daughter embraced, he slowly, gracefully began to shrink, the magical, living light within him fading, his mission accomplished. By the time the embrace was over, he was once again just a small, beautiful, and perfectly crafted toy, standing at attention on the doorstep, and clutched in his small wooden and now once again painted hand, the tiny wooden rose seemed to hold in its silent and perfect form the beautiful, fragrant, and enduring scent of a love that had finally and truly found its way home. The narrator reflects that a promise made from the heart is a powerful and a living magic. It can be carved into wood, it can be painted onto a steadfast face, and it can wait with a silent, patient, and unwavering resolve for a lifetime. For love, like a good and faithful soldier, will always stand its post, and it will wait for as long as it takes for the one perfect and magical moment to finally and beautifully fulfill its most sacred and important duty, to open the door and to welcome a beloved heart back home. And that's how Christmas found its way into another heart.